So today we're talking about the team style and culture, as I mentioned. I am Joyce Jenkins. I've been involved with SIETAR for many years here in Asia, but prior to that in Europe, I was president of SIETAR Europa. SIETAR is a Society for Intercultural Education, Training and Research. We recently launched SIETAR in Southeast Asia back in November, pre-COVID, in the days when we could actually meet up as people. And we had a very nice get together with people from all around the region and from different parts of Asia coming in to get together and look at starting a SIETAR Southeast Asia network. Our mission is to encourage the development and application of knowledge relating to intercultural and interethnic relations. And our values there are laid out. We're very much open to new people, and we're open in SIETAR Southeast Asia, open to those based in Southeast Asia or interested in Southeast Asia. So we're part of a global network. Some of our members, or some of the people who join us, are members from other parts of SIETAR around the world. And we have a team, some of whom are here today. So Seiji, who is manning the technical side and is going to give us a few more instructions if we need them. Marie-Therese, who can't make it today. Judith is here from Hong Kong, was based in Kuala Lumpur and is now here. And we have Greg, who is based in Kuala Lumpur. So hello and welcome to everybody. Before we get into our main talk for the day, which is the real reason that everybody is here, Seiji, would you mind sort of giving us a few instructions on what the guidelines are for working, etc.?
Okay, so as you are all familiar with Zoom already, so I won't make it very long. If you have any questions or if you do not want to interrupt, please just type it into the chat box. And also, if you're not speaking, please mute your microphone, please. And in the middle of the session, at the end of the session, I will also post a link for the feedback to the event as well. So if you can fill that out to improve and give you the best next future events, that would be wonderful. And also, we are going to use a breakout room in this session too. So at that time, you will also, if you can join these interactions, that would be wonderful. If you cannot join interactions, if you can just send me the text in the chat box, I can make sure to add a little bit more people in the breakout room so that at least you be able to see the interactions. But any technical questions, please do contact me through chat, please. All right.
Thank you, Seiji. And yes, so now on to today's speaker, Dr. Philip Merry, and I'm going to ask Greg if you wouldn't mind giving us an introduction to Philip today.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So a few words about Dr. Philip Merry. So Philip has 41 years experience of delivering learning events in 61 countries. He's a keynote speaker, global cross-cultural leadership and team consultant, trainer, coach, and facilitator. Philip has a PhD in synchronicity and leadership, and he is a global consultant specializing in helping multicultural teams combining heart and head using concepts from teams and cultural values, quantum physics, and holography. He is also a certified entrepreneur's 7 dimensions and Livermore cultural intelligence consultant. And his clients praise his ability to reconcile situations where difficult interpersonal and intercultural dynamics are impacting business results. Philip is also a certified speaking professional and a global speaking fellow, and British by birth. Philip has lived and worked globally from Singapore for the last 31 years. And last but not least, Philip was also at one time a London taxi driver. So let's welcome Philip. And Philip, the floor is over to you.
Thank you so much. So Seiji, do I just start sharing now, right?
Yes, you can.
Wonderful. So I'm going to talk as I share this. It's so good to be here, and I'm so grateful to SIETAR Southeast Asia for being here and setting up here. Greatly enhanced, I think, the ability of people to work across cultures. So all Southeast Asia SIETAR people, especially Joyce, I guess, thank you for all the great work that you do. Now I'm going to be in the slide. Sorry, that was, I switched my phone off, but it was still going. Sorry about that. So yes, here I am. And by the way, this background is from my balcony. This is where I live in Singapore. And just to let you know, seeing me as you're seeing me, everybody can do that if you have Zoom. And I found it's actually quite an interesting way of being both present in your presentation and also making the presentation. So the title is Team Style or Culture. So when you're working with different cultures, where do you focus with all the issues? Now, I realize, and I did this intentionally, Greg, I give you a wrong title because it's never team style or culture, it's team style and culture. So my premise today, based on my work, is you need to be comfortable to go wherever you need to go to help the team that you are working with. And as Greg already introduced me a little bit, that was my background. I just wanted to share a little bit of my foreground at the moment. I've just 2 years ago finished my PhD, and I'm now looking at building, or I'm building, synchronicity and leadership. And I'm especially interested in synchronicity across cultures, a variety of things that are there. One thing that I have in the SIETAR box is that I was a founder member of SIETAR Singapore, which we had, which was an informal group. And we were so happy when SIETAR Southeast Asia came. And then way back in the 1990s, I was a member of the board of SIETAR International, which was a lot of fun in terms of focus there. I'm trying to move my slide forward, but it doesn't look like I can. Okay, can. All right. So what we're talking about, what I want to present, and by the way, these are just my views. So it's not necessary that everybody adapt what I say, but here's what I found. Over the years, the last 40 years of doing intercultural work, I have found very often that culture isn't the whole story. So if you come only to a team or a situation with only culture in your bag, then the danger of that, if you are a hammer expert, the danger is that everything becomes a nail. And my proposition here is that there are many other things where just focusing on culture doesn't work. Very often, team members are from one culture. So focusing on culture doesn't work in terms of helping people understand what's going on. Sometimes people have spent a long time in a different culture. One of the worst things that you can do, I think, is as you are working with somebody, say, from Japan, is to assume that they are typical Japanese. You do all the research beforehand, but then when you meet the CEO, you find that she spent the last 10 years in New York, and she's more New York than Japanese. I've also found that a very strong professional mindset actually overpowers some of the cultural issues. So focusing on the mindset of the profession that people have. So sometimes doing just a cultural analysis doesn't help. There are very often big egos in a room within a team. And I found that in collective cultures and individualist cultures, both of them have big ego. There's no big ego, the preserve of one particular culture or one particular approach. How I learned about this was that I was asked to work with a global airline. And obviously, as you work with any team, the first thing you do is you say, what are the issues that you want us to address? Now, I assumed that there'd be a variety of cultural issues, but the CEO replied to me, the basic issue, we all hate each other. Now, this was a global airline whereby it was appointed by one government. When the next government came in, they brought in new people, but the old people stayed. So you can imagine, it's like having Republicans and Democrats running a show, and they all have lots of differences. So that I'd already begun, and this was in the 1980s, I'd already begun to think about this, but this particular assignment really accelerated it so much more. So yes, of course, we all love dealing with cultural differences. It's the reason I came into the business. And I started being a cross-cultural consultant in 1981 when I was working in Sri Lanka. But over the years, there are many more factors that are important. Gender, massively important. The issues within the team may be about men and women. As I've said already, the issues in the team may be about professional mindset. For sure, age is a major factor. We need to pay attention to that. But what I'm focused on for this session is personal style. There are many ways of looking at personal style, many great ways. I've listed them all here. And I use Belbin simply because my clients ask for Belbin more than any other of the personal styles. So whichever of the personal styles and profiles you use, it's fine. But the focus today is Belbin. So a little bit about Belbin. Begun in the 1980s, it's a team profiling system, and it was research done at Henley Business School for 9 years. So literally Belbin for 9 years looked at a variety of teams and tested and researched those teams and came up with 9 profiles. Types of people: a big picture person, a detailed person, a practical person, an ideas person, that he said most successful teams had representation of those 9 profiles. The profile itself is 360 format with 6 observers, lots of benefits to that. The other good thing I like about Belbin is it uses a common sense language. For example, I love MBTI, but it irritates the heck out of me when people say, hello, I'm an MBTI, what are you? And I think that confuses people. Whereas with Belbin, somebody may say, I'm an implementer. Guess what an implementer does? They implement. It also focuses on strengths overused, meaning that if you are an assertive person, the team needs that person, but too much of that becomes aggressive. There are individual, team, and job reports, and certification is run. I run certification in Singapore. It's for life. Once you're certified for life with no yearly fee and free re-attendance. You can come to any session you want subsequently. And the important thing is we're not putting people in boxes. So many times profiling systems put people in boxes, whereas I come from the perspective, the older I get, the more I say and believe that people can change fundamentally who they are at any point in their lives. What it measures, I'm going to move out of the way here. Can you see this full slide? Give me a thumbs up, Greg, if you can see the full slide with DNA at the bottom. Great. Here's what Belbin does very simply to say, in terms of who we are, and this really makes me think a lot when I think about culture. DNA makes us who we are. Some people say 49% of who we are is from our mother and father and our ancestors. Have you ever woke up or been in a meeting and you find yourself doing something and you say, my mum used to do that? To me, that's a direct result of your DNA. Then there is this thing we think called personality. And personality assessment is where we make judgments about what style we think that people have. Belbin doesn't go there. What Belbin does is measure behavior. So when we do the assessments of people, we measure their behavior in teams and what other people see. Now, it's interesting for me always to think where culture fits here, because remember, folks, we aren't born with a culture. Japanese babies don't come out of their mother's womb bowing to their mother and say, thank you for having us. Culture grows and develops as you move all the way through. And I think somehow personality and personal style is much deeper. Belbin, and this, by the way, behind me is Meredith Belbin. He's 93 years old. He's the UK's, I think, #1 guru because he's still alive and still producing books and still producing ideas. He says a team role, a tendency to behave, contribute, and interrelate with team members in a particular way. So when we get people to do the form, the observers just have a list of words that they tick. When they think about that person, if somebody's thinking about Maytal, then I see a word saying considerate, then I say that's Maytal. I say that because Maytal's here and she's my good friend and she's one of the most considerate people I know. So that's what we define it as. I've used Belbin all through my career for a variety of these here, and particularly I use it for couples counseling, because I found that when I'm a family therapist by training from way back, and when I still do family therapy, I find that couples often argue because they are different styles. The guy very often doesn't mind if things are messy. He'll say, oh, it'll be fine. The woman very often is much better at knowing when to make things as good as they can be. I think that has lots of implications in organizations. So I can send you this later on, but I put them all on one screen. And can you see all of those, Joyce and Greg? So here are the 9 styles. What you see in front of you is 9 years of research. So first of all, a team needs the plant, which is the creative person. Top left, yellow. Contribution, creativity. This is a person, she thinks by herself in a room, she will come up with new ideas. But strengths overdone, sometimes plants, creative people, not so practical. Second, resource investigator, guess what they do? They investigate resources. Outward going, extrovert, focused on exploring opportunities, but sometimes over optimistic, many balls in the air, and sometimes they drop some of those balls. But the strengths and the weaknesses combine. Every one of the 9 styles is a positive style. There's no one more important than the other, but it can be that you show the negative rather than the positive sometimes. Coordinator, big picture. The person who knows the strengths and weaknesses of the whole team and is able to delegate to the person that they know is able to deal with that particular issue. Shaper, pushes and shapes, challenging, dynamic, the one who drives through. The one, when you have a problem, the shaper says, great, a problem, I know how to deal with this. But obviously sometimes can be too aggressive and upset people. A lot of the team building sessions I do, cross-cultural team building sessions, I'm brought into those sessions because there's a shaper who's upsetting everybody and people don't know how to deal with them. Monitor evaluator, as it says, they monitor, they evaluate. Logical, analytical, they will give you a reason why something's happening or the best course of action pretty quickly. But sometimes not so sensitive. If I went into work one day and not looking too happy, the monitor evaluator would say to me, Philip, what's wrong? You look upset. I'd say, my wife is talking about leaving me. The monitor evaluator would say, your wife is thinking of leaving you. You have 7 possible courses of action. And by the way, I'm not surprised she's leaving you. I would have left you too if I were her. You didn't want to know that they always need to give you the full analysis. Team worker, concerned for harmony and diplomacy, but obviously sometimes because they like everybody to get on well with each other, sometimes they're indecisive. Because if I make a decision to support you, I may upset somebody else and they may be upsetting the other person too. Implementer, very simple, implements, turns ideas into practical plans of action, but sometimes inflexible because I have my plan, it took me a long time to do my plan and I'm going to continue with it and maybe I'm not so flexible around that. Completer finisher, deadline and details. The ability to focus on the small things that enable a project to come to fruition, but sometimes worries too much and not so good at delegation because they think that they are the best people to be able to do a job because they don't want to let it go. Then finally, specialist, the person who likes to go deep and really understand an issue. On the negative side, they only focus on a narrow front and dwells too much on technicalities. Now, as you look at this, just for a little fun, where do you think you are? as you think about how you work in teams, which is your number one, and where do you think you're not so good? Okay, I'm sure you've reflected on that. Now, what does this mean in various terms? There are three action-oriented roles, social-oriented roles, and thinking roles. A team needs to get stuff done, a team needs to get on with each other, and a team needs to think things through and make things happen. We also find there are opposites, and this is where very often Belbin comes into its own, because when I work in cross-cultural teams, when I do the culture profile, again, I use Trumpeter's, I use Livermore, I use my own model, we find that the reason we're called in is because there's conflict between people. So let me take a very simple one. Can you see my cursor, Greg? Okay, so shaper, remember, is the driving, dominant, get things done, let's move. Team worker likes to be happy.
Sorry,
and everybody
Philippe.
to get on with each other.
Sorry, Philippe, to interrupt. I cannot see your cursor.
Okay, that's all right then. So look at shaper, top left, the red, team worker, bottom on the right, green. These two will oppose each other and argue with each other. And what Belbin enables me to do when I'm working with a team is that if these two are in fact in conflict with each other, they don't address it, because they can address it by saying, you know, Philip, you're a shaper and you really upset me. They won't address it so directly. But once they hear that I'm a shaper, then the person may say, the shaper in you upsets me. So what Belbin does, and there are opposites here, as you can see, it enables and legitimizes talking about conflict and putting conflict on the table. And I don't know about you, but any team I've always ever worked with, cross-cultural teams, always have underlying tensions that they're not dealing with. And it's very often the reason why we're called in to do the work. The other focus, which is an important one, historically, we are in an age for the last 20, 30, 40 years where we are shifting from, on the left side, what we call the solo leader to the team leader. And the solo leader, the guy behind the desk with the deputy who looks just like him and the team member who looks just like him, pushes their point of view, wants conformity, wants people to think the same. We are in an age over the last 30, 40 years where we are shifting to the right-hand side to a team leader, meaning the leader needs to be the one that brings the best out of others, brings the leadership out of others and gets people working together. Now, we've had a resurgence of the solo leader in the last 2 or 3 years. I'm not going to get into politics here, but overall, we are called upon, I think, as team facilitators, is to help people really deal with the fact that we are no longer in the era of the solo leader, but for the team leader. So here's just one page of the profile. So what you get, and again, it's got to be small because I want to get the whole thing. The top line where it says person's self-perception. So in rank order from 1 down to 9, you have the acronym. So CO means coordinator, then specialist, IMP, implementer. If you go to the line, I'm going to come over here. If you go to the line where it says observer's overall view, and you have a line there which has the average of what the observers think about the individual. This is one of the most powerful parts of Belbin, because it enables the individual to compare how they think about themselves with how other people think. So for example, this person thinks they are a coordinator. Greg, give me a thumbs up. Can you see the screen? Good, I'm not blocking, good. Where the person thinks, I'm the big picture leader. Look what happens when you get the observer feedback. That comes down to number 6. So the coaching, I do a lot of coaching one-on-one with cross-cultural leaders is to say, you may think you are the big picture leader who can actually delegate well. Other people don't think so, and they have to adjust their style. There are some other differences. Plant, this person thinks they are number 7 in plant creativity, meaning not so good. Look at where they are with the observers. The observers say, no, you're very creative, a lot more than you think you are. Same with implementer. And if this was the leader, you can see that why there might be difficulties. Implementer is the one with the practical course of action. He thinks he's number 3, and this was a guy. The observers put it down to number 7. So you're able to begin to think about where you are in relation to other people. And this is another page. I'm not going to do all of the profile, but you get a side-by-side comparison. So on the RI, the purple, the small is the purple person's self-perception. On the right of that, the tall purple maroon point is the observers. If you look at implementer, the dark blue, this person thinks I'm very good at getting things done. Observers say, no, you're not. So that's the individual profile, and I really am going through this quickly, so I hope you grasp the basics. Now, there's an individual profile and there is a team profile. What the team profile does is bring together all of the different people within the team and then gives you where the strengths are within the team. And in this team already, you can see there is nobody in the monitor evaluator where it says void next to thinking, and there is nobody in the implementer where it says action. So if you've begun to do your work beforehand by asking the team leader and the team members, where are the issues in this team? Very often people will say, yeah, it's the cultures that are the issue, because we pass it to this particular group of people and they don't do things as they should do. This blows that argument away in the sense of it's nothing to do with culture. It's to do with the personal styles of the individuals in the team. So as well as analyzing culture, and I'm not saying that's wrong, obviously, that's a great thing to do. What it also means is you can begin to look at the personal styles that individuals have and say, so how do you strengthen these two areas where there is a void? Because the areas where there is a void are clearly impacting the results of the team. So what we need to do, so that's Belbin. Obviously, whichever tool you use, here is Trumpanars. I've known Trumpanars for 20 years, and I use this tool a great deal. Livermore, I think, is one of the best tools around because it's 360, and I know at least Maytal is certified in Livermore. Hofstede, the dark model, and then choose your own models. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. But what I found is that when you're looking for collaboration in a team, very often we assume that the bonds are with people from your own national culture. But what I found with using Belbin over the last, God knows how many, it's 30 years, is that you can actually have stronger bonds between people with the same personal style than between their own culture. So the practical implementation people, the engineers very often, have a stronger bonding than they sometimes necessarily do with their own culture. So as I said, I've been using Belbin since 1984. These are teams that I've worked with. I'm going to highlight how I've used Belbin. I've got my eye on the clock, Greg, for 10 before 6. This was the United Nations team in the Maldives. And apart from the white guy on the left, all of them were from the Maldives. So when they asked me to do a cross-cultural session, it didn't work so well because I said, so this is Maldivian culture, what are we going to talk about? So we actually did a Belbin analysis, and they found that to be much more useful than only concentrating on the culture. The small dynamics within a team, and in this picture here, you've got a group that I worked with. This is a finance simulation game, ran for 5 days, where people were in small groups working to make money. The table you see in front of you is a factory, and they basically are moving money around in 10-year periods over 5 days. And we observe the dynamics within the team. Now, the interesting thing here, that the woman on the right is from Thailand. By all measures of culture, she's the one that would be more focused on diplomacy, making sure everybody's getting on well. Not at all. She was, in Belbin terms, a shaper, and how she ran the team was as tough and as aggressive as anything that you were looking at. In fact, dealing with this team was having to deal with her aggression. If I were just doing a cultural analysis, that would never show up. So the Belbin allowed us to actually see what other people thought about her. So even though she was Thai, she was actually very assertive and very dominant and very strong. And some of the guys didn't like it. When I work with teams, I put them into situations where they're solving problems. Here's a session that I ran in Singapore with a German MNC, where literally they are in 4 teams, and each team is next to one of the wheels in the Formula One car. Their task for a whole morning is to change the wheels to see who can make the wheel changing the fastest. I found that when I'm specifically talking about problem solving, personal style gives me a lot more insight into the issues than a cultural analysis does. With these groups, there were 4 groups, we did a Belbin analysis for each one of them, and we found that showed us what was going wrong in their problem solving style. Again, I'm not going to spend lots of time, I'm just sharing this with you in terms of focus. Gender is an absolute must. This is the United Nations team in India, and I was running a session and I said to the head of the team, do we need to deal with any relationship issues? And he said, no, we're fine. We did that last year, everything's good. So this is a 3-day program I was running. And as you can see from that group of people there, these are all heads of agencies. And as you can see more and more in organizations, especially in the UN, there are a lot more women than men. These were gender issues that they wanted to bring up. And every time they brought them up on the first day, the boss said, no, we're good, we're fine. So I got a delegation from the women that evening who said to me, Philip, tomorrow we want to raise relationship issues and gender issues because we feel they're very, very important in this team. Now, had I done just a cultural analysis, that wouldn't have brought that out. So I'm not saying this is Belbin, it's just an example of another type of issue. And I really encourage everybody, if they don't already, always put a gender on the table. I was asked to deal with a team who were being made redundant in Bhutan. This is one of the most amazing sessions I ever ran because we were actually camping by the side of a river in the mountains of Bhutan. And these folks wanted me to come and do a cross-cultural analysis because they were all returning to countries from a team in Bhutan, and they wanted to understand how to present themselves in that culture. From the analysis that we did beforehand, it was actually nothing to do with culture. The personal style was what they needed to look at. How does a shaper integrate themselves into a particular country? How does a monitor evaluator do that? How does a team worker do that? So I'm just giving you here examples of where, when I was supposed to be coming and doing a cross-cultural session, it turned into a team profile session. Here's one of the most significant pieces of work that I did, bringing together culture and team style. Yes, this is with the World Bank in Kenya. I'm just moving out of my way, getting used to this. If we stepped one step back with this group where they actually were when this picture was taken, you disappear into the Great Rift Valley. One of the great things about doing work, as you know, is we get to see some of the most wonderful places. Now, the problem I was asked to help this group deal with, they were a research group with the World Bank. all PhDs. And what the problem was that there were complaints about them from all the countries that they were serving in Africa. They were too abrupt, they were too straightforward, they weren't relationship focused, etc., etc. So the World Bank called me and said, we need a cross-cultural session. But I said to them, how do you know it's culture? Well, because these folks are going to countries that are not their own countries and they're upsetting people. I said, yeah, but how do you know it's culture? Long story short, in the end, they didn't think about doing a cross-cultural session. We did a Belbin session. And what we found was that these PhD research people were mostly monitor evaluators and plans. Monitor evaluators don't take into account the feelings of the other person when they're giving good or bad news. The facts are the facts. So what we spent our time doing was not doing culture program too much. I did a little bit on that. I did an hour on that. And the other 2 days was all about your personal style as a professional researcher. You've got to be able to build relationships as well as deliver the facts of the research. And we had a good outcome from that because of that. But had we gone down the cross-cultural route, it wouldn't have taken us anywhere in terms of focus. This is the last slide, and this is next to the last slide in terms of the work that I've done. Again, this is a team in Vietnam, all from the same culture, apart from the lady on the right who was from France, Greg. But again, they wanted a cross-cultural session. But what's the point? They were all from Vietnam, and so we did a Belbin analysis, which began to get to grips with where were some of the conflict issues. The woman on the left was the team leader, very strong, very straightforward, and she was having difficulty because of personal style issues, not because of cultural issues. And then finally, of course, we have the good old Aussies. When Aussies, and this is a group of Aussies many years ago, when they don't cooperate, it's not about culture. There's just lots of different personalities. Belbin is the United Nations preferred tool. I had the privilege of meeting Ban Ki-moon in Korea. And over the years, I've trained 150 team facilitators with the UN who are Belbin certified. So if you're ever doing work with the UN, then if you get to know a little bit about Belbin, then that could help you get business because it's their preferred style, team style, and is often used on their leadership programs. So in conclusion, near to conclusion now, Greg, I think, and this is just my view, and you may disagree with me, and that's fine. There is a constant interplay, I think, between all the facets of who we are all the time. Whenever I behave in a certain way, for sure, some of that will be because I'm English, but I'm from the north of England, so we're a little different from the people in the south. But there will be many other factors too. Many other factors too. My profession, my focus in terms of problem solving, my focus in terms of contribution. So in any situation you're working with in teams, and obviously we're cross-cultural trainers, so a lot of that will be culture. Ask yourself, and maybe ask your team before you begin, what is really driving the behavior and the difficulties? Point 3, I've mentioned already, it could be many factors. So my point here is be careful of assuming that culture is at the heart of the issue. For sure, culture is going to be there, but there are many other things too going on. So there is my presentation. I've tried to keep to time, and actually I've finished 8 minutes before, Greg, so that probably gives us more time in breakout rooms. So should we take some questions now, or what do you think, Greg, Joyce? Should we go straight into the breakouts?
Yes, we have one question. Yeah, we have one question from Natalia.
I can see it, yeah.
Yeah, Natalia is certified in team management system assessment. So she would like to know, according to you, what are the strengths of Belbin?
Do you want to hear my answer, Natalia? if you look at team management system, which is a great system, it's almost identical to Belbin. So the two are very similar. The only difference is, as far as I know, unless it's been developed lately, team management system is not a 360 system, except for the linker, the person in the middle. And so that's the big difference. And TMS, team management system, is a great system. But when you look at their styles, they're not a million miles away from Belbin. But why I choose Belbin and my clients choose Belbin is because of the 360 aspect, meaning that it's always wonderful to know who you think you are compared to how other people think you are. So that's the big difference, Natalia. Do you want to come back on that? Or is that? I'll leave that with you, Greg.
Thank you, Philip.
Any other questions?
Not at the moment. So maybe we can go for the breakout rooms and then there might be more questions.
Okay, so fine. So what we're talking about is, what is your view of personal style issues? I presented my experience and what I do. Maybe this is just me. So I'd really love to hear your point of view. And if you think personal style issues are something to pay attention to, what do you do? How do you currently do it in the work that you do?
Okay, I will put everyone divide it into 3 rooms now.
Okay, and elect someone to report back. So that's great. Only 3 rooms, Seiji. So
and how much time do we have, Seiji?
Let's say 10 minutes, or would you like to extend that to 15 minutes?
I think 10 minutes is okay, Seiji.
I will broadcast it 1 minute before closing the room, so you will know. Right, so you should get the notification to join the room. Yes.
Yes, so welcome back, everyone. We hope that we had a great discussions and we look forward to listening a summary of your sharing. So which group would like to start the sharing? Who is ready to jump in? Tanya? Perfect.
Yes, okay. I start, it's easier because no one has said anything yet, so I have more things to share. Okay, so in our group, we had a few things that came up, but I think something that was interesting is we talked about adjusting the delivery, and not only adjusting to the team members, but at the beginning, we could come in with some idea of who is going to be in the room, and then we have to adjust quite quickly to how are they actually. You know, might be a group of Japanese, but they don't behave like the average Japanese, or might be a group of French and they don't behave like the average French. So we come in with some idea at the beginning that is going to help us to go faster into the material, but then we have to have the flexibility to adjust. And then what came out of all of us is then once we are really into the training, we have to adjust according to the profile of the different people in the room. So that was the main thing, that we cannot deliver a program the same way to someone who is typically German and to someone who is typically Chinese. We might have to follow the agenda, not jump any pages, cover all the material in details. So that are the main things that came up of our discussion.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And the next team who would like to share? So we see the spirit moving between the members.
So yeah, so
yeah,
maybe the others can just add to what I'm saying. So what we discussed in our group is we all agreed that you have to go beyond culture. So what Philip said is absolutely right. I mean, we all do it in our work. We go beyond culture. It's not only about culture. And we realized that we work with different methods. Like Julie works with DISC. I work with a completely different method called the Strength Deployment Inventory, which has got to do with motives and things like that. Vincent was also familiar with Belbin. Maybe you can say something, Vincent. Where are you? I don't see you here. Yeah. And yeah, so we actually agreed that Belbin is one method, a very interesting one at that. And but it's, I mean, we do work with other theories than just with cultural theories. So you have to go look beyond culture. There's no doubt about that. Whether you look at it from the point of view of motives or any other point of view, you go beyond culture. So it's, so there's a personal style that's not just limited to culture.
Okay, cool.
And our third team, third and last one.
Yes, it's our team. I work together with Rekha, Maito, and Judith. And we think first it's very difficult to separate personal issue and the culture issue in the training and the consulting. And Maito has a good point, as we need to remember as facilitator, we are involved, we're part of it. So, and I think Rika mentioned, which I liked very much, it's really neat also based on the context, what situation it is. So it's a very mixed situation. And Judith said it's quite very difficult to separate these two topics, but we're very easy to label people. I think these are all very good parts. From my side, I found if it's a cross-culture team and some problem common, everybody complain about that, might be more culture related. If it's then everybody reflects on the different sides of the problem, might be more personal related. That's purely based on the experience. So that was a discussion from our team. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Philippe, would you like to add a few words before we go for questions?
I think all valid points. I mean, it doesn't matter which system you use. I happen to use Belbin because my clients ask for Belbin. All the systems mentioned, DISC, TMS, strengths deployment are particularly important. And I want to take up Emily's point that it's difficult to separate culture and personal, but the reality is that it's there. And the way to think about it is to just imagine, you know, your own behavior. Anything that you do during your day, reflect on where did that come from? And I do this regularly. And, you know, I'm 70 years old and still learning. There's so many things I have to learn, because sometimes I can say, this is because I'm English. My love of awful football is because I'm from the north of England. That's the joke. But my particular style, I love people to be involved in a group. My dad was a coal miner, and I know that that part of my behavior comes from the fact that I grew up in a coal mining community. But I also know I'm a shaper and a plant, and I haven't changed much in the last 25 years. So I think the way around it, Emily, because you expressed this so well, it is not easy, but if we know it exists, then begin to really just use your own life as a way of beginning to reflect, where does this come from in me? Because once you can do that, then you can show that same understanding to participants. And I'm a big believer. I have a massive, before I work with a team, I do a lot of analysis and meeting and reflection. Don't get to do what are the needs of this team on the first morning of the training, because you may find it's a total waste of time. You prepared the wrong program and you got the wrong materials. So I like to do a lot of analysis with the team leader, very specifically, why are you needing to do a team session at this moment in time? What is driving it? And it might be because the CEO has said, your team needs to do a team building. And so people come very reluctantly to the session. So the more you can beforehand look at what needs to be done, i.e., what is hurting in this team? So the fact that that example I gave you when the guy said, what's driving this team building is we all hate each other. I did something that I've never ever done. For 3 days, each individual of a 13-member team sat in the middle of the team, and everybody else said what they liked about the person, and then everybody else said what they found difficult about the person. Now, if you do that, always remember to finish the likes first. Because when you get somebody to give feedback and say, here's what I like, here's what I don't like, people never remember what was liked. And so each person took an hour and a half or 2 hours, center of the team, with everybody else saying what they needed them to change. I've never done that before. It was 3 days doing nothing but that. So the more you can understand before you set up and do the session, the better it is, Emily. But I like what you said. It's not easy, but the reality is we know it exists. So we need to find ways to work with that. And I liked what Tricia said. Where's Tricia in the first group? Is it Tricia in the first group or Tanya? Tanya, okay.
Tanya.
I like what you said. When you arrive in the room, begin to understand and empathize and feel the group. What do they seem like? What do they feel like? What are the issues that are there that you need to focus on and think about? So that's my quick response, Greg. So open for questions.
Thank you, Philip. We have a first question from Natalia. How do you define which factor dominates in a given conflict situation in a team? Personal, cultural, gender, professionals, and what are the key indicators for you to be sure if it's a personal style matter?
Natalie, is a great question, and I love TMS, and so it's very nice to have somebody from TMS. I'm trying to find Natalia, maybe she's on my page too. Oh, there you are, Natalia. Okay, sorry. So TMS is a great system, very similar to Belbin. These days, in the discussion that I have with the team leader and the team members beforehand, I will ask them what they think are the issues. And if there seem to be personal style issues as well as culture, I'll do both assessments. And I'll say, when we're, and I like real life stuff. I'm a family therapist by training, so I like people to discuss the real issues with each other. And I intervene. When somebody says something and somebody else responds, I'll be watching for the feelings behind it. And I often do the exercise where people give feedback to each other. I was doing a session in Kuala Lumpur in 1993. I remember these dates. And one person said to the other, in terms of feedback, positive feedback, I think you're good at your job. Now, we were about to move on, but I stopped and said, you don't sound like you really mean that. Is there anything going on between you two? Now, before the session, I'd actually asked the team leader, what are the issues within the team? And she said to me, the main issues are these two people. And so we literally there and then got out the issues between these two people. And what had happened was that one day, a long time ago, the guy had swore at the woman and used the F word. And then when and this was 1993, I was doing this, when I said to her, so when did he say this to you? She said, November the 4th, 1988. I said, have you talked about it since? She said, no. So those immediately helped me understand this was a personal style issue, not about culture. And so do the homework beforehand, Natalia, but also pay attention in the room. And you have to really have switched on all your sensors for watching the dynamics. But I'm a big believer, when I do a session, I will really align myself with the team leader, who's my customer, and I'll say to her, when I'm doing the session, are there any particular people where there are difficulties at the moment? So the more that I know that beforehand, when an incident happens in the session, I know I can intervene around that. Does that begin to give an answer, Natalia?
Thank you very much, Philip. Yes, I understand, and it gives me good foundation.
And you're in Helsinki, right?
Yes, yes.
Nokia is one of the organizations who's done more Belbin profiles than any culture on earth. And I've run sessions with Nokia all over the world just using Belbin profiles. So they would know that and understand that. Thanks, Natalia. And I'm just noticing some of my old friends here. Vincent, you're there. You're looking dark. Your face looks dark.
I am, yeah. Sorry for that. Yeah, I'm at work, okay. And I'll try to change after I finish. Yeah, good to see you, Philip. After those
15, 20 years since we met, right?
Yeah, with Trompenade at the time.
Yes, yeah. I think so.
Philip, I said I have a comment and a question. I'll start with my comment.
Sure.
I train engineers at my University of Technology in the Netherlands.
Okay.
Yeah. So we train them in professional skills. We use Belbin. We've used Belbin for quite a long time.
Okay.
We've identified this interface indeed between culture and personality. I think it's very important to identify the interface, the shifting panels between the two. Sometimes they are in conflict, sometimes they overlap, whatever. So I think that I like it in this sense. I still get what you mentioned, a bit of frustration because they are all engineers. So you see the kind of the professional culture. They are often, let's say, shapers or resource investigators. When someone is a plant, he's being laughed at because the plant had a little bit of a negative reputation of being the thinker only.
Right.
So so that's I think it's a good tool. I'm still not completely convinced, and this is my question now to you. We know now through the neurosciences that our brain is the plasticity of our brain. And I was wondering, and I'm going to be a little bit provocative with you, Mr. Belbin here. Don't you think that all those models we've used, whether they're cultural, we know them, or they are indeed for team roles, and I think Belbin is better than FBTI, certainly, but still that this is a bit past stadium, and we should now move into the neurosciences with the plasticity of our brain, and that makes us react differently from situation to situation, from contact to contact, etc. So I'd like to confront you with this provocative question.
Okay, so Vincent, your shaper hasn't changed in the last 20 years because it's a very confronting question, which is what you were 20 years ago. But Vincent, were you here at the beginning?
I'm sorry for that. I missed the beginning indeed.
So that's okay. No, it's a great question, Vincent. I 100% believe you can change anything you want to in your profile. With neuroplasticity, then obviously anybody who says we can't change is an idiot, because we can change. The brain is plastic, and we know that where we are today could be different if we set a goal to be somewhere else tomorrow. Let me give you an example. I delayed doing my PhD, and you probably don't, we talked about my PhD 20 years ago, but I actually got it from a Dutch university, Tilburg University, where Fons came to my defense. And for a long time, I said, I don't want a PhD. I don't want to lock myself in a room because I won't know what's going on. And I like to interact with people because I'm a resource investigator. I love being with people. So my strategy was this. I actually bought a second TV, put it in my office, and so put it to National Geographic, so that anytime I was bored with looking at my research papers, I just turn off and watch the TV. Over a period of, and by the way, my monitor evaluator was low. because I hated all this analytic stuff and sitting by yourself analyzing. Over the time period of my PhD, I got really to enjoy the research. And when I next tested my Belbin, my monitor evaluator moved up from 7 to 3. So you're making a great point, Vincent. And I want to say to anybody with any profiling system, MBTI, TMS, whatever it is, do not put people in boxes and say, that's who you are, that's where you are, and that's where you're going to stay. We know now that anybody can achieve anything that they want to achieve. And I see that CJ Ung here, CJ does Belbin in China. He does all the Mandarin versions of Belbin, and I know I've talked to him about this and he would agree with me. You can change anything that you want to change. And indeed, you have to do that because the Belbin profiles actually show the negative side of your style. So when I'm coaching, I say to shapers, please go on being tough and assertive, but you need to control the aggressive side of your shaper. So I'm in full agreement with you, Vincent. A great question, as always.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you, my friend.
Absolutely. I'm trying to be more visible in the minute.
Julie Samuel. Hi, Julie. Long time since I've seen you as well. 15 years.
Too long.
Too long. Any more? Are there any more questions?
No more.
And let me finish off the final slides then. Greg, is that okay?
Yeah, we have another 2 minutes.
So let me just,
yeah.
I've got 2 more slides to just finish off. And then we'll finish. Too little time as always, right? Just 1 second, folks. That's the disadvantage of this, Seiji. You have to go through everything. Okay, so here's my final focus. I know most of you have this already, but to get liftoff, to enhance your intercultural facilitation, get clear on what is your own personal style, because your own personal style will be impacting the situation that you are working in. And if you don't know what that is, then that can be problematic. You need to make sure that you continue to learn and grow and develop. Belbin is one that's available, but TMS is great. Always have, this is my final words in a sense, always have as a second bow to your string, a personal profile system that you can use as well as your culture if it's necessary. And
thank you.
I need to say thank you to Joyce, to Greg in helping me prepare for this. It's been a pleasure meeting you all and seeing so many old friends. I mean, that was really nice to see old friends. Thank you and good luck in all you continue to do in this area. Over to you, Greg and Joyce. Thanks, Vincent.
Thank you very much, Philip. And Arti, give you the floor.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Okay, so so let me start with okay, thank you, Greg, for enabling and facilitating this session. Joyce as well. Let me also thank the participants for fantastic questions. Tanya, Pritima, and Emily for their feedback from the breakout rooms, and a fantastic session, Philip. As I mentioned earlier, I think it was on point. It was insightful. It was interesting. I loved the photographs and your examples. And I think, you got many of us to reflect on the relevance of personal styles, as many of us are intercultural coaches and we tend to focus more on culture, rightly or wrongly. And I think sometimes it is important to zoom out and kind of be more cognizant of the bigger picture, right? So, so thank you for that. I also liked, that comment of yours in the beginning on, I wrote it down actually, the danger of being a hammer expert is that everything becomes a nail. And I thought that was nice, well put again. Also, on a lighter note, I like the fact that you used Belbin for couples counseling. So I thought that was pretty versatile as these things go. So yeah, so great. So thank you so much for a great session. If people have any questions, any observations, anything that they want to share, they're welcome to use the chat. If not, they can also write to us at SIETAR Southeast Asia, and we could, forward the questions to Philip if that's all right, and we could come back with the responses as well.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So I think with that, we could.
I'll just add my thank you as well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Joyce.
Philip. That was really, really great.
I'm happy to be. If anybody wants to know more, please just write to me. I'm very happy to respond and help in whatever way I can. Sorry, Joyce.
No, thank you. I really enjoyed, and I don't know about everybody else, but it was so nostalgic going to see you doing training and coaching in all these different countries and with real people and not virtually. So it really made it feel like, a sort of a historic event there. Actually, I noticed there is one final question from Natalia, and it relates to that. Is there any evidence available on whether the roles of team members change when physically present team becomes a remote working team?
Well, the basis of Belbin, and I was talking to Greg about this earlier, obviously people may adjust and change according to the context in which they are. So we're actually doing at the moment with Belbin UK, and I've been with Belbin as their representative in this part of the world for 20, 25 years. We're actually doing research about that at the moment, Natalia. But the interesting thing for me is that Belbin is the deeper part of Belbin, so the superficial part of Belbin, as all systems. It's about how are you now in your team, in your job, in your role. But the underlying thrust should be, with any personal system, is who are you? Who is the authentic person that you are? And so Belbin helps with that journey. And I've noticed that online, for example, some of my introvert friends are so happy because they don't like to talk to anybody, and now they have a reason not to talk to anybody and can switch things off. I get very frustrated in lockdown, and my wife is more introvert than me, and she's a great Belbin coach, but sometimes, folks, I have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, get in my car and drive around Singapore maybe once or twice to feel free. So that's my Belbin style, because I'm a resource investigator. I live off connection and contact with other people. So the basic research, Natalia, will be that there is probably similar responses when you are in lockdown to how you would normally have face-to-face, but that's what we know so far. So it would be an interesting piece of work, and I'm sure with TMS, you could do this as well. Are people changing with lockdown? From my experience of myself, not so much, but maybe we do. Maybe we do. It's a great question. And my next certificate, okay, privately. Okay, I've got a private message about my next certification. Please, I mean, I'm not selling, I don't sell, but if you are interested, just contact me. I give advice and thoughts with no charge to people. So please feel free to write to me and ask any question that you would like. But thanks, Natalia, great question.
So thank you again. Thank you for sharing your time, and thank you all for joining and for all of the great interaction and great contributions. And I think we have a lot of expertise here, a lot of sharing, which is very valuable every time that we do it. If any of you are not yet on our mailing list, the link for joining there is the form Seiji has shared in the chat, but you can always email us. And also if you have any feedback and also suggestions for other sessions. Last time we had a number of volunteers come forward, and we're looking forward to actually planning the schedule We don't have confirmation of the next session yet, but we're working on a timetable, including some of the suggestions and volunteers that people have put forward. There's lots of interesting things going on, including, you know, what is the future of working interculturally, you know, given how difficult it is to move these days. Is that going to change the way that we all interact, and things like international students moving from, for example, Pritima's suggests is working with students from Asia coming into Europe, and we also have students from US and from Europe coming into Asia, and doing some comparisons of cultural aspects of that. So quite a few different things coming up. Watch this space, get on our mailing list, look out on our LinkedIn. Thank you again to everybody for coming along, and thank you for your time. And thank you again to Philip and to the great SIETAR Southeast Asia team, Artie and Greg and Seiji and Judith, all for doing all this work. Thanks a lot, everybody, and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Have a good week, and see you next time.